Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their nonlinear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find the link for in the show notes. Today, my guest is Bryan Fikes. Bryan graduated from the University of Mississippi, where he earned his Bachelor of Accounting from the Patterson School of Accountancy. He is the strategic leader with a track record of successfully executing tactical business plans and organizational initiatives. Bryan is passionate about the importance and development of company culture, strategic planning, and analytics. At the age of 16, Bryan acknowledged his issues with substance use and experienced firsthand the challenges an adolescent faces when learning to overcome a substance use disorder. With this experience came the passion for helping other young men identify their own struggles and to provide a place where they can receive a comprehensive and individualized treatment program to achieve lifelong recovery. Bryan was named one of Mississippi's top CEOs in 2024, serves as a chairman of the board for Intended Good, Stonewater Council for Youth, and is an active member of Goose Creek Tennis Club, Oxford Park Commission, and Country Club of Oxford. He is a member of the Emerging Leaders Fellowship of Christian Athletes Board and volunteers his time in various roles as a part of the congregation at Pine Lake Church. Bryan's achievements and dedication to his community have also seen him named as one of Oxford's 40 under 40. In his spare time, he enjoys tennis, golf, pickleball, and spending time with his wife and their 3 sons, and they have a 4th on the way. Congratulations, Bryan. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Bryan. All right, Bryan, thanks for being on the podcast. I'm excited to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Am I going to see you next week in Detroit?
I don't think so. I'm
Okay.
I'm holding down the fort on the home front.
There you go. Okay, fair enough.
But I hope you have an incredible time.
I'm
sure it'll be a special week.
Usually is. But we won't spend any more time on that. It's always fun though when I get to see you at a conference because you just like bring a good energy.
Right back at you.
Well, let's dive in. I actually don't know your full story. And what I think is always just super neat right out of the jump is when guests talk to us a little bit about, where did you grow up?
Well, would love to. I'm really grateful for my story and just the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how today we just really feel. I feel, our family feels like some pretty incredible things have come of that for all of us. So when I grew up in a pretty traditional home. I lived a pretty normal life, I guess. I was in school. I was doing sports. I was enjoying those things. I was I had a lot of friends, great relationships with family. And when I was in the sixth grade, I transitioned from a private school to a public school and was kind of confronted with this popularity crisis, this wanting to be seen and heard and known, and having sort of accomplished that in this private school setting with, very small classroom to now being in a much larger school. And I think, I just happened to gravitate towards a certain group of guys. I played, because of the sports, I was playing lots of sports growing up, up to that point, and was competing at a pretty high level. And so as a result of that, was on travel teams and that sort of thing, and got to know guys that were in the public schools. So, when I transitioned, it wasn't like I didn't know anybody. Kind of gravitated towards the guys that I knew, and ultimately those guys had older brothers, and we wanted to be like those brothers, and we did what they did. And part of that included acting out. And so there were certainly behavioral challenges to start, and then drugs and alcohol became a part of the picture. And within a few short years, I was very seriously addicted to some of the most serious drugs on the planet. And I think in that moment, right, it was crisis. It was my family never having really had to deal with that before. I'm the youngest of three, and the first two did pretty well. And I was checking the boxes, and we were moving along at a pretty good clip there for a little while, and then took a detour and wound up in a pretty bad place. So we immediately began to try and understand how to support me in this, and what next steps should look like. And I was we brought in sort of an advisor for that. And I was initially scheduled to attend a 30-day program, one of the best in the country, a residential treatment program. And I was agreeable to that. And for a brief season, I was agreeable to that. And when it came time to actually admit into treatment, I changed my mind and went away for a number of days or weeks. I'm not exactly sure the timeline, but ultimately I came back around really out of necessity. And it was at that point that I was able to find treatment. And instead of 30 days, it was 90 days initially. And then I transitioned from a 90-day program into a therapeutic boarding school and did about another 12 months in treatment before ultimately transitioning back home and finishing out my senior year at high school, and then attending college. And then, a couple jobs later, we're here today. We started a treatment center supporting young guys like my former self and those families. And our effort now is to try and help them experience the healing and the restoration that our family experienced.
Well, and we're going to do the shameless plug. So we'll just jump right to it right now. So if you feel comfortable, what is the name of said program that you are operating?
Yeah, so it's thank you for that. It's Stonewater Adolescent Recovery Center. We're in Oxford, Mississippi, and we do residential treatment for 12 to 18-year-old boys, young men. And are super passionate about that work. It's a very intentional, individualized level of care. We focus on a lot. It's a comprehensive program. I would say, it's kind of rooted in evidence-based therapies and in pursuit of purpose, helping our guys really understand what that looks like and how do I identify it and then get after it, and then through that, and I think through that interest, our guys become much more open-minded towards addressing some of the issues that are prohibiting them from pursuing that purpose. So
Mhm.
there's buy-in, and when we can get buy-in, well now we're kind of off to the races. But that can be a hard thing. That's easier said than done. And so, a big part of what we do is working with the guys to get them excited about what they're capable of and how that can have an incredibly positive impact on community.
Mm.
And then once we get there, then it's about, okay, well, help us help you to do that.
Yeah.
And the depression and the anxiety and the drugs and whatever are probably creating some issues there, and we can help you to address those things.
I appreciate you bringing up some of the components, right? Or like the pillars that make up Stonewater. You led with evidence-based treatment. You talked about kind of like the pursuit of what it is that we're like in an effort for almost like self-discovery or identity. Like
Mm,
that's really important. The thing that was going through my mind as you were talking is like, there's probably a lot more, right? That you are very clearly having been through a 90-day program for yourself, followed by a therapeutic boarding school. There are some drivers that you want to make sure that you are doing differently based
mm.
on your own lived experience. Is there anything else that you can kind of highlight in addition to what you've already listed that feels like here's one other like really distinct difference? That obviously I'm going off script, so forgive me
Yeah.
for doing this one, but I'm just thinking in this moment, like you said it, we created this program to essentially be available now in 2025 for young men such as myself, but in
Mm,
this day and age. And we know teenagers nowadays are a lot different. I mean, we've still got a lot of the same struggles, but we're just living in a different time. And so I think that also, when I say that, we're also dealing with the importance of how we're supporting people in treatment. So
yeah.
I don't know if you have something else that you want to add, but if you do, I just wanted to ask that question because it felt like it was kind of off the top of my head in that moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And if I had to identify one more thing, I think it would probably just be company culture, like organizational health, and how we really consider that to be at the bedrock of what we do and who we are. The idea is that there's smart companies and that there's healthy companies, and oftentimes there's an argument about whether or not those two things can exist together. That business is really better suited for the smart approach, and that the healthy approach is less efficient or effective, or there's sacrifices that have to be made like towards the operation. And we've just found, and studies have found the opposite to be true, that we can be healthy and smart. And if we're healthy, then we're probably smarter. And, just buy into that has transformed the way that we operate and deliver care. If as an organization, we have clarity on who we are and what we're trying to accomplish through our vision, mission, and our values. And then through the pursuit of those things, we are more bought in and engaged as team members. Well, then naturally, the resident is going to experience that. And I think through that, their care is better. Just a small example, direct care staff in our organization, they're entry level staff. They're oftentimes new to the field or the work, and it can sometimes be difficult to get these team members excited or inspired about the work that we're doing. I mean, it's hard work. They're on the front lines of it. Maybe it's really exciting for a little while, but then it can become really difficult. And so we're encouraging those team members to really connect with their purpose and their passion in a way that they can identify, hey, why am I really doing this, and what's the motive? If it's the right motive, then I think weathering sort of those tougher days, or supporting the residents as the residents struggle, is easier and is more natural. But also, like, if that individual is bought into the vision, mission, values of the organization, and they have clarity there, well, then they're going to be much more engaged with the organization as a whole and consistent in the way that they come to work and present and carry out their task, which the resident really appreciates. I think my experience, but kind of going to my experience in treatment, was that, man, when I got to engage with direct care staff members that loved their job and wanted to be there and were bought in, not to discount the work of my therapists, but there are a lot of those direct care staff members that I will remember forever. And just kind of the informal conversations or discussions around about life and recovery, and kind of off hours, people that I looked up to and that I could relate to, and that were consistent in the way that they came into work each day and applied standards and held us accountable, that were reliable. That meant a lot. And I think at Stonewater, what we've tried to do is create an environment where that's who our direct care staff are, and there's not some big swing from team member to team member, but that we're all kind of rowing in the same direction at the same time. And the residents and their families, ultimately, they experience that and they benefit from that.
I'm like shaking my head. I'm like totally nodding, like along with you, like, yes, that makes so much sense. Because honestly, the other thing that I feel like, when I talk with parents or talk with programs, and sometimes the struggle is like retaining frontline staff, right? Or kind of like direct care staff. But like you said, these are usually people that are newly graduated or like young or entering into kind of the helping space. But they are the ones that spend the majority of their time with clients. And so they can really, depending on how they're showing up, can really have greater impact than folks realize. So I love hearing about that based on your personal experience, and then obviously kind of implementing it and driving it now at Stonewater. So I'm just going to ask this because it feels also appropriate. If your younger self, right, like sophomore Bryan, pre-treatment, could see you now, what do you think he'd say?
I can tell you this: I didn't always have this haircut. So as I just envision interacting with that young man, and him interacting with me, I guess it would depend a lot on at what point you caught me. Pre-treatment, I probably would have had very little to say to a guy like myself, to my future self. I don't think I was given the time of day to most people. And then I think post-treatment, I would have been grateful, to have the interaction and the engagement with somebody that was older and wiser and knew better. I think for that first kid, the kid that was struggling, he would probably communicate if we really, broke it down, and if he were willing to go there. I think he would communicate some struggles with identity, like really understanding and being comfortable with who he was and who God made him to be. I was spending a lot of time with guys that were much older than me, and coming from very different sort of backgrounds than I had. Not to say that in general is a negative thing, but in this particular instance, it was not really a good thing. And I don't know. I think there was kind of a constant sense of unrest of trying to maybe prove myself, or wanting to be different or better than how I envisioned myself. And I think that kid needed to know and trust that he was exactly who God made him to be, and that was nothing to be ashamed of or to be uncomfortable with, and that he could just stop all the trying and all the sort of striving to be somebody else. And like, probably too little too late of a message at that point in my life, given that there was some real chemical dependency at that point. But I don't know, hopefully I would have been encouraged by that. I just, I've got boys now. I've got three boys and 7 years old, 3 years old, and 1.5, and we've got a fourth on the way in July, fourth boy. And so I've spent more time than ever before on just, okay, what messages do I think are important for my boys to learn? Maybe that I failed to learn or that I was unwilling to learn or whatever. And this is a big one, that just you're exactly who you need to be. And even now, I'm sitting with my 7-year old. He's coming home and he's sort of experiencing this urge to try and be somebody else. And I just feel like I'm constantly having to remind them that you're enough and I love you for who you are, and nothing that you do is going to change that. And I hope that that's a message I can continue to instill in him. And I hope that at some point he really starts to believe it.
And I'm sure there are some parents too that are listening to this, whether they're parents of, young adults or adolescents or even like younger children like you have yourself, that are kind of hearing that, being like, yeah, right, I should probably be reinforcing that with my own children. I love hearing that. Last question, because obviously we could probably talk for a really long time, but
All day.
All day. I want to make sure that folks know that in the show notes, there will be links for them to connect with you, to learn more about Stonewater Adolescent Treatment Center, to just get curious. Because I know you all do a lot more too in the Oxford, Mississippi community, not just like, hey, nationwide, we attend conferences and whatever else. Like there's a lot of work that's being done from an outreach perspective. That said, last question. If you could, I don't work with teens, and your experience was as somebody taking a break, going to treatment in high school. So I think that I have an idea of what parents are probably concerned about when they're coming to you. Like on one hand, it's like, my young adult is struggling with substance use and they've got some mental health struggles, but how does this impact academics, right? Or whatever, or like, how do I know that they'll still be on track to go to college, right? I'm just making assumptions of like what pretty common concerns show up when you're connecting with parents. So if you could just give any, just one piece of advice, imparting advice for parents on like, what might provide a little bit of reassurance or information as they are, if they're looking for treatment for their young person, what would you leave as your imparting gift?
Well, yeah, I think you kind of hit it spot on there. Oftentimes we see a real concern with academics, and athletics, or just the extracurriculars. We treat a lot of really talented kids, and so that have worked their lives towards becoming really skilled at what they do, and they have all of this natural gifting, and so oftentimes there's been a real investment in the development of those talents and those gifts. And so the concern with families can be, all right, well, so do we have to compromise all of this effort and all of these years for treatment, and to do this thing that is, like I said, similar to how it was with my family. I mean, very foreign to them. These are foreign waters, and now all of a sudden they find themselves in an environment where they're having to make decisions that could possibly impact forever, and that's daunting. I guess to relieve some of the pressure, most of the time we have some time to evaluate the decision, to make the right decision, to consider what's best for us in that moment. And it's not quite as emergent as it can feel. Now, that's not to say there aren't emergent cases. There certainly are. Two, I think just because we make a decision today about treatment does not really mean necessarily that now our child could be, the course of his life could be changed forever. I think that's kind of a heavy concept. And certainly if I feel like I'm the trigger man on that deal, then I'm going to be much more intimidated by this whole process. It's regular that we would get a young person into treatment, that we would begin to treat him, that we have to pivot sort of mid-treatment and move in a different direction, maybe with a discharge plan or with school next steps, or with, a sports team. Hey, maybe we have to take, a few months off, but there's still a spot available for him, in the fall. Or what we find is that as we begin to wade through treatment and its complexity, that the sort of the next right answer is pretty clear when it presents itself, and it starts to sort of unravel a little bit and unwind. And I think we see that there's a more clear path forward than certainly what felt like there was when we were making the decision to pursue treatment or not. So it's a bit verbose, but I think hopefully a parent can hear that and be encouraged that it's not like one way or the other. It's not mutually exclusive. Either they do well and pursue their academics and graduate high school this year and go on to college and to get a job and to get married and have kids. Like, that's one option. Or the other option is to go to treatment and not go to high school and not get to go to college and now be struggling to find a job. And like, it's just not that way. We see that we can do treatment that can be so successful. We can then just finish school, maybe a little bit behind when we had originally planned. Then we get to go to a college, maybe even better than what we thought, because now there's this awesome experience that we have. There's this recovery journey is inspiring to, an admissions department or whatever. And so now there's opportunity there. And, my spouse, we really came to know each other because of my recovery journey. And she was just really attracted to that, and she thought that was cool, and she was beautiful and awesome, and we were kind of connected through that initially, and then we got married, and we've got beautiful kids, and all is well. So, and God did an incredible work, in our lives through that. So, again, a bit long-winded on the answer, but just encouragement to families to appreciate that this can all work out.
I love that. And that is the perfect, we're putting a pin in it. That is the best way to end this interview. Bryan, I appreciate you being willing to show up here, share a little bit of your personal story as a participant in treatment, leading to the work that you're doing now, and then even sharing more about, again, your personal life as it is all interconnected. It's not just here's this personal path and it's completely compartmentalized. It is very interwoven. So again, thank you. I know that there are parents.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yes, I think we will see each other soon. I just don't know when, but I think it will be soon.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.